Hello, everyone. Every time with the wire, I'm so sorry. How are you doing tonight? Well? Good, excellent. Such enthusiasm. My name is Jarett Wieselman. I'm the senior editor for BuzzFeed, and I am thrilled to be here with you this evening to lead a conversation with the actress of the star you just watched. Ladies and gentlemen, Emmy-nominated Joanne Froggatt. Hello, Joanne.
Hello everyone. Thanks for coming.
Everything is fine. We're all okay. You guys watched a very...
I hope you're all okay.
we were talking about it back there. We're like, we have to just let them know everything's cool. Starting from a place of love, right?
Yeah.
But before we get there, I think it's so interesting because Downton Abbey was such a phenomenon here in the States when it premiered. So I think, in a strange, maybe ethnocentric way, a lot of us Americans were sort of like, look at all these fresh-faced British people who have never acted before and are suddenly on our screens. Clearly not the case. You, in fact, began acting quite young. I had read something that you had left for school, like professional acting school, when you were 13. Is that true?
Yeah, I actually, acting is all I've ever wanted to do since being tiny. None of my family are in the business, so I'm not quite sure where I got it from. I grew up on a farm, so totally different. So I had a bee in my bonnet that I wanted to go to stage school. So my parents, didn't want to say no because they thought it would make me want to do it more. So they kind of went along with it and then went so far with it that I got an audition and got in, and then they were like, oh, we've got to follow this through now. This is really hard. So I moved away from my family home in North Yorkshire to Maidenhead in Berkshire, which is about 5 hours away, when I was 13, and went to stage school there till the age of 16. And there was an agency with the school. So, it was really a kids' agency for sort of toothpaste adverts, and, it wasn't exactly the Royal Shakespeare Company or anything. But and I did an episode of a show called The Bill in the UK, which is no longer running, when I was 15. But that was great because I had at least something that I could show casting directors and such like. And then I got my first proper role when I was 16 on a soap opera in the UK called Coronation Street. And I did that till I was 18 years old. And my agent now saw me in that and called and said, was I represented by anybody? And I wasn't at this point. I was just agent free and, just flying by the seat of my pants, if you like. And that was that. And I was just really fortunate that I think at that age, having had the experience of working on TV, not that many people my age had much experience. So I worked on TV drama and some really fantastic drama pretty constantly for the next kind of 3 years. And then I was lucky enough that, it kind of followed on from there. So 17 years ago that was, so.
When you were just 1 year old.
Yes, I was one.
But let me ask, so you sort of left for school when you were 13. Did you continue with school during the acting process, or did sort of those on-set experiences function as your drama school in some ways?
Yeah, they did really. I think, I always planned to go to drama school at 18 as well, but as I said, I started working, and then I bought a house and all those things, and it just, and I thought, well, it's silly to leave work to go and train. But certainly, I do think Coronation Street was partly, a great training for me, because I was lucky enough that I was working with proper actors. And, I really learnt a strong work ethic there, because there's no time, there's no rehearsal. So you have to do your homework. You have to not only learn your lines, but you have to rehearse with your co-stars. Me and my co-stars were constantly, in the green room rehearsing before we go on set, because, otherwise it's you that looks silly if it doesn't go well. So that was a really good experience in terms of pressure, working under pressure. And then, I just learned as I went along, really, in theatre and TV and film. And, I think that's a nice thing about acting, really, that you're always developing your skills, no matter what theory you've learned or what experience you've had. You can learn from people that are less experienced than you, people that are more experienced from you. Sometimes less experienced people bring that fresh enthusiasm that you forgot that you used to have. It's just a constant learning curve, which I love.
Absolutely. So now, from looking at your resume, there were a lot of what seemed to be sort of one-off almost TV movie kind of roles that you did. Is that a big market in England, the idea of sort of these TV movie of the week kind of thing? Because in America, it's huge.
Yeah, there was not really. It's not a kind of TV movie of the week, but it's certainly. I think it comes down to, because the film industry. I mean, it's certainly stronger now in the UK, but it hasn't been very strong, and it's certainly nowhere near the strength of the American film industry. So I think it comes down to, actually it's easier to get a film made for TV sometimes than it is to get it made for cinema release. So I think it just comes down to wanting to get the script out there, really.
At that point, I mean, look, let me ask you like this in a very loving, kind way. Looking back, are you proud of all of those roles in those films? Like, are they of high quality?
Yeah. Actually, I played the lead in 3 TV movies over a course of a few years. And they were all true life crime dramas. One was called Danielle Cable Eyewitness, and one was called See No Evil, about the Moors murderers. One was called Joanne Lee's Murder in the Outback, about Joanne Lee's and Peter Falconio that were, he went missing when they were travelling in Australia. And still, that's some of the work that I'm most proud of. I totally threw myself into those parts, and they were really, really, really great quality television. And yeah, I still, look back on that as a high point. Yeah, definitely.
When at that point, I mean, what was it you were looking for in roles? Because it sounds like they are all sort of women on the verge of fill in the blank.
Yeah, I know. I did. Well, that's why for me, getting the role of Anna was quite a departure, because I'd kind of made a name for myself in the UK for playing quite traumatic, difficult roles. Challenging, gritty. Very emotional scenarios. So when the part of Anna came through, I just thought, oh wow, this is great, because previously I just played the lead in a British independent film for cinema, which was so I played a soldier suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. So I just finished filming that, and then the script came through for Downton, and I thought, oh wow, this is amazing, because it's totally different from the last thing I've done. She's nice, she's okay, until we get the trauma later on in season 4. But she's very secure in herself. She's emotionally stable. She's emotionally mature, and so that really appealed to me about her as well. Because I think as actors, we all want to do something different and challenge ourselves, and we just like the change, really. I think, yeah.
I mean, if you could go back to the audition process for Downton. I mean, you get that script. Julian had this incredible pedigree coming off the work he had done in cinema. Did you have a sense when you read that first script that this had the potential to be something really special?
Certainly that it had the potential to be something really special. I remember my agent calling me about it and saying, there's this script, and Julian Fellowes has written it, and Maggie Smith's attached. And I thought, sounds quite good. 3 Oscars. I'm totting up the Oscars in my head. I'll have a read and see what happens. So yeah, and I read it, and literally the first 3 pages, I was hooked. It really was a page turner, and I was always up for my character Anna. I never was seen for anything else. And I just fell in love with her straight away. Within the first few scenes I read of Anna, I just really connected with her and connected with the character that Julian had developed. So I just went for one audition, and it was a relatively easy process, actually. I mean, I had to wait a little while, because I know Julian had written the part of Mr. Bates with Brendan Coyle in mind to play it. And at first they were slightly worried about the age gap, because there is an age gap. So they changed the script slightly from the original. So at first they got together much more quickly in the story, but because of the age gap, they decided it should be more of a slow burn, and something that develops rather than necessarily a physicality. It was an emotional connection that developed and stuff. So, which I think made it all the more beautiful, really.
I agree. Being there on the journey with them, I think, was so much more meaningful once we actually got to the destination.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you've invested all that time,
right.
And you've invested your hopes in these people, and I do the same as an actress. You kind of are willing them to come good in the end. Yeah.
For sure. To return to the idea of ethnocentrism, I think a lot of Americans assume that all Brits sort of grow up assuming they know how to play somebody in these period costumes, and there's just, this is taught in 2nd grade is what we think. This is just what you do. In reality, how much of sort of a learning curve is there in putting yourself into this world that is so foreign to anyone who lives in modern times?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's like when you approach any role, really, you do the amount of research that you need to do to feel comfortable with your character and feel like you really know who they are. So for Anna, when we first started, we were all told to watch Gosford Park as research for obvious reasons. And even though that's set slightly later, it's the hustle and the bustle of the downstairs. It was the feeling of a big house like that. And then I read a book called Keeping Their Place, which was all diary entries and real letters from servants and their employers. And that was really fascinating because it gave sometimes a bit more of a personal view on relationships between servants and the aristocracy. And just kind of did, some research on the internet, and I watched some documentaries about the time period. And for me, it was very much, even though I knew in the back of my mind where women were in this time period, it was just that reminder of, when we started Series 1 set in 1918, women still didn't have the vote, and, all of these things. And it seems like, wow, this is only 100 years ago, but it's, women have moved so far since then. So it was getting that into your head and the social, the social hierarchy of the house and your place within that. But we have a fantastic historical advisor on set called Alistair Bruce, and he's our man on the ground, if you like, that tells us how we should turn a bed down and tells us all about the history of the time. So if there's anything we've missed or anything that we need to know, then he's there on hand to give us the info. So
it strikes me that Julian Fellowes, the creator, might be the kind of executive producer, showrunner who is very meticulous about a script. Every article of speech gets said exactly the way it is on the page. You're shaking your head, so I'm assuming I'm correct.
You're very correct, yes. Yes, no, Julian is very specific about the dialogue, and rightly so, because it obviously works very, very well. So, yeah, but I mean, every job's different. Some jobs, like Downton, are very specific word for word on the script, and some are very, very free. I've just done a drama at home for BBC, which was all improvised. It's not been aired yet. So that was totally different because, going from a very strict script to nothing at all. And that's sort of terrifying and liberating and amazing experience as well. So it's knowing to approach each job slightly differently. And with Downton, it is very specific. But the nice thing about Downton and about Julian's writing, which he says himself, is that what your character is saying is not always what your character's saying because of the constraints of the time period and, and the social politics and all of those things. So that gives you a freedom as the actor, because that's your freedom to make more of what you've got. I would say there was a scene in the first season of Downton where Anna brings Mr. Bates a tray of food because she's found out that he's been sacked. And I think it's the end of the first episode, because of his limp. And she's just taking him a tray of food and says, here you are, there's some food. But really she's saying, I connect with you, I feel sorry for you, are you okay? But she can't say any of these things. So that's a fun thing to play, to kind of think, okay, what am I actually saying by giving you, saying good morning or whatever it may be.
It is interesting, and I feel like, especially in the first season, obviously there are clear lines between the upstairs and the downstairs, but there is also a really interesting blurring that happens. And I feel like in the first year, Anna was the character who was sort of, at least from my perspective, blurring the most in terms of her relationship with Mary and the way they treated her. I mean, it was cool because this was not a typical servant-servee kind of world. I mean, that had to be exciting to play someone who really did have her feet in both in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I get I'm very lucky as a character because Anna gets to be upstairs and downstairs, and like you say, blur those lines slightly. And I love doing the scenes with Michelle because they are friends. And again, what makes playing those scenes interesting is, that there are these constraints that you have to work in. So Anna's quite free in what she says, but sometimes she has to bite her tongue and be told, or sometimes, there is just that spark from Lady Mary that's, it's just a little reminder of Anna's place. So it's a very, interesting relationship to play.
Yeah. Oh, When Mary needs to hide a dead body, who does she
That's
call?
it, she calls Anna.
She calls Anna. I'm just saying. That's friendship.
Yes.
That's friendship.
Exactly.
So Downton premiered in UK in August of 2010, or September of 2010.
Yeah.
And then in America 4 months later. Which, from your perspective, was like the bigger boon? I mean, was it as insanely popular in England as it was in America?
Yeah, it was actually. It kind of felt like a progressive thing. It didn't feel like it happened overnight. I mean, it was a very fast progression, but it aired in the UK, and at this point in the UK, in 2010, drama wasn't particularly strong. We'd had a lot of reality TV on the screen, and there hadn't been a lot of money put into television drama, so. For ITV, which is a commercial station at home, who aren't known for their period drama, to put all this money into this quite lavish show was seen as a huge risk. So the fact that it paid off was fantastic for all of us, obviously, but great actually for the industry as well, because it did have a knock-on effect, and people started to see that, oh, actually, an audience does want to see good drama still. It's just that we haven't been giving it to them. So that was nice to feel like you were part of a show that was part of moving that on again. Yeah. And then, as the show started to air in the US and other countries, it just quite quickly, but gradually we were hearing, oh, people are watching it in the US, and then people are watching it in Spain, and it's the top show in Spain, and everyone loves it in the US, and we were like, oh, wow, this is good. This is really good. So, it was just every few weeks we'd hear the next exciting little snippet of viewing figures from across the world. So it was great.
I think on some level it also helped because we weren't inundated with it. I mean, there are so few episodes produced for each series. It's just a handful. I mean, it must be nice to be telling these people's stories in sort of bursts as opposed to ongoing runs like you probably did with Coronation Street or we have with our soaps. I mean, this is sort of like a treat when it comes because it's only 6 or 7 hours. Yeah,
absolutely. And I, for kind of the last 15 years, I've not done a returning series. I've done more, I have done series, but a single series or film for TV or film or theatre. So this has been a new experience for me as well, and it's been wonderful because we film for 6 months of the year, then we're free to do other things for 6 months. And when we go back to filming after the break, it's like going back to school. We're all kind of catching up, and we're all excited to see each other, and and it's really nice. And you're also really excited to see what's happening with the characters and how Julian's moving the stories forward, and yeah.
Well, I would love to talk about that because one of the interesting things I think we talk about a lot on this stage is collaboration between creator and actor. How involved are the actors with Julian's process? I mean, now that you guys have brought these people to life for 4 years, do you get more of a say in where he thinks they should go? Or is it still very much, I get my script and I read Anna's lines?
We don't really get a say in where the characters are going, but Julian quite freely says himself that he, from the beginning, he totally created these, beautifully well-rounded characters that we were able to sink our teeth into. But he, he said when he watched the rushes of the first season, started to write for the way we were acting them. So he then develops the characters, with the actors in mind, which is lovely. And although we don't have any say in really where our characters' journeys end up, if there's anything totally that anybody feels really uncomfortable about, then Julian will listen. There was a story that with Mr. Molesley at one point, and Julian's spoken about this himself, so I know I'm not being indiscreet, but that Kevin Doyle, who plays Mr. Molesley, just felt that it was really out of character, and went to Julian and said, look, I'm not sure, I really don't feel like this is this man. Right. And Julian rewrote it, and he was quite happy to do that, and said, no, he was right with that, I think, so he's very open to...
He was like, no, Molesley would not be successful at a job he has for a long time.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
crazy.
Molesley will never be successful at anything,
crazy.
Poor Molesley.
Oh, poor Molesley. Well, with that in mind, I'm curious because when you're playing someone over a long period of time without knowing the destination, as an actor, what's important to you about maintaining their trajectory and keeping continuity with them during that process? It's
difficult because it depends what kind of storyline you have, I think, because some some people have the thought process that, oh, as an actor, you don't need to know what happens next for your character unless you would know what happens next, because in life, we don't know what happens next. And there's something to be said about that, certainly. In some situations, that can be really helpful and can work really well. But if you have a very emotional story to play, I think it's really, personally, I find it really useful to know the arc of your story, because then you can plan your emotional journey, because you might have 5 scenes to tell this story, or you might have 3 scenes to tell this story, and you don't want to give the same emotion in each scene. You want to show this character going through the stages to get from A to B. And so sometimes it is really useful to know how many stages you have to get from A to B, just technically. So yeah, and again, I think it depends on the project, really, everything.
I would imagine that also is very true on a show like Downton, which has such an enormous cast. You probably wouldn't necessarily get as many scenes to tell that story as you would on a smaller show.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, the scenes we have on Downton, half the scenes you do, you're supporting the scene, and half the scenes you do, you're leading the scene. So those snippets are even more, they feel even more important in a way, because you have quite a small space of time to tell your story.
Right. Well, in series 3, Anna's big story involved #FreeBates, because he was, sort of wrongly accused. I'm not sure. Remains up to the viewer. But that was really the first time we got to follow Anna on almost a season-long emotional journey that did not involve sort of falling in love with Bates and having the love affair with Bates. What did you like about her sort of being a little bit of a detective and also a little bit of this really desperate wife to save her husband?
Yeah, Anna Bates investigates. I enjoyed doing that, because it was nice to, it was nice to show her independence and her strength again after the falling in love and all that, which I loved to play. That was really lovely to play their, getting together and their relationship blooming, if you like. But yeah, no, it was just different again, which is nice, because they were separated, so it was Anna kind of pushing the story along, if you like, to find out, to free her man, and as anybody would want to in that situation, and it kind of strengthened them as a couple again, I think, because in the viewers' hearts and in my heart reading the scripts, because you're just willing for them to come through, and you're willing for her to free her man and then be happy together. So
I take it to mean, to be the woman who plays her, you have to also 100% believe that Bates is innocent.
Of course he's innocent. How very dare you? No. Yes, I, of course, Anna believes he's totally innocent. I think Julian writes it quite purposefully, that there's a little bit of vagueness about that there's just a little bit of danger about Mr. Bates, that nobody's quite sure. But no, Anna totally 100% knows, hand on heart, that he's innocent.
I love that. This season, the episode which we just watched sort of kick-started a very unexpected storyline for Anna, which I think was really powerful in the way you performed it all season long. It had to have been, I would imagine, very difficult to bring that to life. So, just on the ground level, what was your reaction when Julian told you this was to be her journey in this season?
I was surprised. I actually went for a meeting with Jarett, our exec producer, and I said, what's going on for Anna this series? And he said, oh, it's big. It's really big. And I was like, okay. And I said, what kind of big? And he said, it's really big. Okay, but what am I doing? And he said, oh, I'd really like you to read it. So I did. And I was, I was really surprised. I thought, wow, this is big. So it just felt a big responsibility, really. I think playing anything that's a very sensitive subject matter, what's in my head always, whenever I've tackled sensitive things in previous roles and for Downton, is people at home watching it that may have been through similar experiences or may have had loved ones that have been through similar experiences, and just feeling that big responsibility that I don't want anyone to ever watch something I do and not believe me, or not believe that I've tried my, I've put my heart and soul into doing the best I can to make it believable, and that I really care that, that comes out that way. So that's what I think about going into those things. And then again, it's sort of doing the research and making yourself feel prepared, that you know as much as you possibly can about the situation your character's going to be in. And again, with the rape storyline for Anna, it was all not only, the obvious, trauma of the sexual attack, it was also this happening to a woman of her social standing in this time period, and the social views at the time, which thank goodness have changed now so much. But because I first read the script and I really wanted her to tell Mr. Bates. I so wanted her to tell someone, and I was just, oh, Anna, just tell someone. And I sat down with Alistair Bruce, our historical advisor, again, and he said to me, he talked me through the time period and said, you have to remember that, all a working class woman had was her reputation, and rightly or wrongly, she had to protect that. More than anything. So if she told anybody about this, she could lose her family, which would be Mr. Bates. She could lose her job. She would have brought disrepute down on the house, even though it's not her fault. And, in this day and age, thank goodness we have different views. But that in that day and age would have been the situation she was in. She would have probably become destitute because society would have seen it as, oh, he's only a man, he can't help himself. And that's why Julian specifically, I think, wrote this storyline for this character, because he wanted it to be a character that is totally free of blame, because she's just a warm-hearted, lovely person, and wanted to make that clear that it was, an unprovoked attack.
Right.
So, yeah.
It's interesting because obviously there is a lot of historical preparation that would need to happen, as you've just mentioned. But I'm curious, did you feel in the emotional preparing for it that you would have prepared to tell that story as if it took place in Downton times or yesterday?
Not emotionally. I think emotionally, it depends what scene. The actual, the kind of scene straight after the attack, probably prepared for it emotionally in a similar way as I would have done playing a contemporary role. But obviously the scenes later on where she can't tell Mr. Bates and she feels like she can't tell anybody, then it's finding a different emotion that is that really strong, need to keep this a secret, because she feels totally shamed by it, which is something that, having done research on it, a lot of rape victims do feel in any era. But for Anna and the time she's living in, that's tenfold really. So it's a slightly different approach, I think.
We asked the audience for questions before, and we got a lot of people wondering how you emotionally or mentally or physically prepare to film a scene like that. Do you have to do something different on the day to get to that place to be ready to film that?
Yeah, I think each day is different, and some days it's easier than others. Like we all know, sometimes you're having a bad day, you can feel emotional. Sometimes you feel really happy when you wake up and you think, oh, no, this is not the day to do an emotional scene. So some days you have to work harder than others. And I think what I try and do is not set myself too many rules. So something that makes you feel, so you can think about something sad or something, something that affects you, but that can be a different thing every day. It could be as simple as something you've read in the newspaper that morning. And I try and just be kind to myself and be open to what's happening, what I'm feeling that day. Because sometimes if you can, I've been doing a play before, I've had to cry for 3 months and had, been able to cry brilliantly for 2 months, then all of a sudden, the thing I was crying about just didn't work anymore, and then you have to find something different. It's not always the same thing. And also, I sometimes listen to music on set, not because I'm kind of listening to sad music to make me sad, but it's more the fact of so I can really focus, and to stop kind of, it stops laughing and joking with the crew and everything else, because I can't kind of have a laugh and a joke and then go in to do an emotional scene. But I think it's important to remember, try not to put too much pressure on it, because we always have breath in our body. We always have emotion in our body. And there's a meditation exercise you can do, actually, which you just kind of focus on your breath and, you know, just kind of sit with yourself. And you can almost kind of feel your emotions starting. And then you just kind of breathe in and feel like you're touching your emotion with your breath. And I sometimes use that exercise as a technical thing the day before, just to remind myself it's there. I don't need to worry about it. And then I think it's mainly just focus and concentration and really trying to just put yourself in the moment and trying to forget about, you know, everything else.
What about on the opposite? I mean, what about at the end of the day? I mean, this was a lot of heavy material to live with all season long. I mean, if you guys film for 6 months, like you said, and this happens pretty early on in the season, that's a large portion of the season when you are in a very dark place every single day. What did you have to do in order to not bring that home to your real life?
Well, sometimes I do dream about work a lot, especially when I'm doing intense things. I do, yeah. You know, you do naturally take it home with you because the mind is a wonderful, crazy thing that, you know, you can't just switch it off sometimes. But often when you've had a day doing really emotional scenes, sometimes you come home and I'm sometimes really hyperactive and the total opposite. And I think it's just that release of going, oh, I got through those scenes today. Yes, I've got some more to do, but that's, you know, I've released that bit of it. So I think it's important to, like I say, go with that and go with what you feel you need to do. And sometimes you're just really tired and you want to go to sleep, and, you know, and sometimes you just want to have a giggle and let the day free, you know.
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting to hear you talk about finding the breath and knowing that it's there. I mean, do you consider your style of acting to fit into any traditional style? Or are you method? Do you need to stay in character all day? Or is it something you've just developed for yourself over the years?
It's something I've sort of developed myself because, like I say, I went to stage school, but I didn't go to drama school, so I wasn't classically trained in any method as such. But I naturally am quite method, but I don't have to stay in character all day. Again, it totally depends on the job, and that's what I've learned over the years, because sometimes I've been forcing myself to do something on a job and forcing myself, like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and realised it's not really worked. And so over the years, I've definitely learned to approach each thing differently and kind of go, I think the main thing I always come back to is instinct. Just go with my instinct. I don't think it's ever really been wrong, and the times I have been wrong is when I've gone against my instinct. So I just think, you know, once you've got the background of your character in your head and you've done what you feel you need to do to know who this person is, then just feel it. And then technically every job's different, because if you're doing theatre, obviously, then yes, it's, you know, technicalities need to be there and the voice is different and your performance has to be different. So yeah, it's just being open to each thing, really, I think.
Absolutely. Obviously, there was a lot of sadness and darkness to come out of this storyline, but I thought one of the best things in terms of the show was the relationship between Anna and Mrs. Hughes and sort of how they're there for one another all season long. The idea of a scene partner, I think, in this world is very interesting because the dynamics are different between the genders, they're different between the classes, they're different between the ages. I mean, it must be very exciting to be on a show where you can engage and have so many different kinds of relationships with so many different actors.
Yeah, it's fantastic. That's one of the amazing things about Downton. And I love playing the scenes with Phyllis Logan, who plays Mrs. Hughes. She's just such a fantastic actress, and she's so much fun as well. And that's, you know, that's the great thing, because we get to work with such an array of actors, from, you know, the most experienced, Dame Maggie, to young people that have just come out of drama school and it's their first job. So it's a real treat to, I mean, I remember walking on set and seeing Shirley MacLaine and Maggie Smith do a scene together, and I was just like, wow, this is amazing. You know, I was like, oh, this is the best. You know, I mean, how can you beat that? You know?
I agree. You said it was very important to you with this storyline in particular to do it truthfully, because there were people watching at home who had probably gone through it and things like that. Talk a little bit about sort of the engagement you've had with fans in the aftermath of this. I mean, do you feel like this was something that you achieved what you set out to from an actorly place, given how fans spoke with you about it?
I hope so, yeah. Certainly that's the reaction I've had, so, which is positive for me. So yeah, I mean, there was, you know, it did caused quite a controversy in the UK press, but people that have spoken to me on the streets, just you know, viewers and fans of the show, have been really complimentary about the storyline and about the way I played it, and you know, and the fact that Julian wrote it. And I received a letter from a lady that had been through a similar experience, and Julian had a letter from another lady as well, and that was incredible that somebody took the time to write and tell me, you know, such a personal thing about them. And all this lady said in her letter was, thank you so much to Julian for writing the storyline, and thank you to me for playing it in the way I did, because she also hadn't told anybody about what had happened to her, and she just said it made her feel like she wasn't alone. And I thought, wow, that's such a powerful thing to be able to achieve, and I'm just a tiny part of that. I'm just the one, you know, on the screen saying the words and telling the story, but you know, it's Julian's story, and it's the team that are putting it together. But you know, that's when you think, wow, this job can be really, really special.
Absolutely. With that said, obviously the show has at least 1 or 2 more years to go before Julian makes us all.
I can't say anything about that.
Not trying. But I'm curious. I mean, you know, you've gotten to live with her for 4 years. You've gotten to fall in love with her. You've gotten to sort of go through really hard times with her. What has been the most surprising thing for you about the life you've lived with this person you've created for so long now?
I think the most surprising thing about living with this character for so long is well, A, how much I love her, and B, the more I play her, the more I'd like to be a bit more like her, I think. Because she's just very, you know, even though she's kind and generous and warm-hearted and all of those things, she's very strong-minded. And I'm not quite as strong-minded as Anna. I get a bit more easily swayed. So, yeah, so I think, I really admire her. The more I play her, the more I admire her, yeah.
That's got to be nice to play a character that you would actually want to spend time with.
Yeah, because that doesn't always happen, yeah.
So we took some questions from the audience. So I'm just going to go through these now. So the first question is from Lorraine, and she would like to know if you have a favorite actor or actress on the show that you get to work with, and why.
Yes, I mean, I love doing the scenes with Brendan Coyle, because we just work so well together, and we have such a shorthand now, and we have such fun working together, and Phyllis as well, and Michelle. I think you do become attached to the actors that you work more closely with, really, you know, in terms of your character, you know, the actors that your character works with more. So I'm very, but I guess I don't think there's a bad choice really in the ensemble. So, but I'm very pleased with with getting to work closely with Phyllis and Brendan and Michelle.
Excellent. Sahar would like to know if you have to do anything physically to change your look before you go to set in order to prepare to become your character.
I have to look a lot worse than I'd like to. I usually go into makeup looking a bit tired with no makeup on, and come out looking pretty much the same, but with a wig on, and that's it. Yeah.
How fast is your hair and makeup process for the show?
Well,
then?
believe it or not, it's still an hour and a quarter to look that plain. I know it's quite a feat. So it's the hair really that takes more time, because obviously I don't really wear any makeup. I don't mind. I don't really have any vanity when it comes to work. Yes, as myself, I'm a girly girl. I like makeup. I like to do my hair. But on screen or when I'm playing a role, it really doesn't bother me, you know, what I look like. I think it's as long as it's right for the character, because that makes me feel like somebody else. And I like nothing more than to look in the mirror and go, "Ooh, don't look like me. I look like someone else."
With Downton, how helpful is it to find Anna when you're in her wardrobe and when you're in those sets? I would imagine just the visual and tactile experience must help immensely.
Yeah, it really does, actually. It makes it very easy, you know, and certainly when you've been playing a character for so long, as soon as I put Anna's costume on, it's just like I put her on. Mm-hmm. It's such an easy transition now, which is lovely, you know, which is great. And as you say, as soon as you go into a set, and you know, sometimes if I'm finding it hard to concentrate some days, or, you know, which we all get days like that, I just kind of try and just think, okay, be still, look at the set, look at the actor, just remember, listen, remember where you are, remember where you're supposed to be. And it's very easy to get back there.
We started this evening with you basically saying you've known for as long as you've been alive that you wanted to be an actor. But Dana would like to know, was there an event or a person who truly inspired you to become an actor?
There were probably quite a few. I had a head teacher at high school, would be the equivalent at home, who was very into drama and set up an outside drama club from school when I was 11. And that's certainly how I started to hear about stage schools, and I joined a drama group called Theatre in the Round in Scarborough, which is, Rounders, which is connected to the Theatre in the Round in Scarborough, which is Alan Ayckbourn's theatre. And that sort of opened up a lot of, a lot of doors in terms of, I remember hearing about the stage newspaper, which apparently had auditions in, and it was actually, auditions for kind of dancers and things like that, not things that I would be going in for at the age of 11. But but that's where I read about stage schools, and that's where I got the idea about that. So it was just a kind of gradual process. So he was quite influential. And then actors that I watched, I remember watching a drama series in the UK called Band of Gold, and that was Samantha Morton's first job. And she just came onto the screen with this, this swagger and this reality that I'd never seen before on screen. It was a very gritty show, so being 13 or 14 at the time, I hadn't really watched a lot of things like that. And I was just blown away by her performance and thought, wow, that's really something special. And then, the greats, I guess, like Meryl Streep and Maggie Smith and Judi Dench, and I love Toni Collette as well, or, kind of strong character actresses that have managed to forge a career for a lifetime, really, in all genres, theatre, film, and TV.
Absolutely. Well, lastly, Joanne, in closing, I'm curious, you have a room full of actors. It's a very rare opportunity that an actor gets to be in front of other actors. And I'm curious if there is a piece of advice that you've been given or something you've learned over the years that you would like to impart to other actors.
Oh, that's difficult. I think mainly, I was just talking about this before, I think it's just to not give up. Because I've certainly had times where, I've been making a transition with one thing, or, just things haven't been going the way I've quite wanted them to. And you do get stages where you think, oh, this is hard. Do I carry on with this? Is it ever going to happen for me? And I think just keep enjoying it, keep following your instincts, keep doing things that you love. We all need to pay the bills as well. But, if you can, try and balance the bill paying with the, with the artistic things. And just try, and keep your passion, and just be, just keep going, really, I think is the only thing I could say.
Tremendous. Well, Joanne, thank you so much for being here with us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of you for coming out tonight, and thank you to the Screen Actors Guild Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.